You don't want to work with an agency that is working with all of your competitors. Hello everybody, welcome to Surge. This week we will talk about industry-specific questions that you ask when you are trying to execute a marketing strategy or a development project for your business. Now, Joe, we get this question a lot. We have different industries. I mean, there are hundreds of industries in the United States alone, and we get this question often, which is, do you work with our industry? Have you done any marketing within our industry? Have you done any functionalities within our industry? Have you ever done an e-commerce project, web development project, web service API within our industry? Obviously, we've been around for 14 years, but we haven't worked with every single industry and its sub-industries. What do you say to a prospect who comes and says, have you ever done any work with a company that sells cat sweaters? Like, what do you say to that?
What are the chances, right? Okay. So at the end of the day, we get asked these questions all the time. But what they're asking for doesn't need to be industry specific, right? When it comes to custom functionality for that industry, when it comes to integrations for the industry is irrelevant. Because at the end of the day, it's the technology that we have the know-how and the experience with. So again, they're asking the wrong questions. At the end of the day, what you're looking for is the experience in the technology aspect of it, not who it's for, but more so how it's executed and if it's executed properly.
Got it. Well, we get a lot of requests from B2B companies. They say, well, have you done any development work in industrial machinery? Have you done any development work for an apparel brand? Have you done any work with a B2B e-commerce website that sells, let's say, pet products in bulk? So we get all these requests, and what Joe means here is that from an industry standpoint, the technology does not change across different subsets of that industry. The functionality doesn't change, the marketing execution doesn't change. Now, what changes is the brand, your message, your value proposition, your services or products.
And obviously the demographic.
And the demographic.
Right.
So when you go to a marketing agency, a development agency, even a PR agency, when you ask, hey, have you done anybody like us, or have you done marketing or development for somebody exactly like us, that question to us actually does not make sense. The reason it doesn't make sense is because you don't want to work with an agency that is working with all of your competitors. Because what's going to happen is there's going to be a conflict of interest there. So this is something that we also tell our prospects and our clients. We have a rule where we don't work within the same region with two different businesses that are direct competitors. However, nowadays, if you look at what Amazon has been doing from an e-commerce standpoint, at least, what Wayfair is doing, what Overstock is doing, what all these medium-sized businesses are doing, your keyword competitors with a lot of people on Google search and on paid search and on Facebook and on TikTok, with influencers, wherever you're advertising. Now, Joe, of course, we don't want to ignore the question when somebody comes and says, let's give an example of the, cat sweaters. This is actually an actual question that we got from somebody who said, this is a very sizable business that just manufactures cat sweaters. And that was the question. Have you worked with anybody that sells cat sweaters before? What do we say to that?
You're asking the wrong question. At the end of the day, the question that these business owners should be asking is, this is my business plan. This is my monetization strategy. Have you ever successfully executed a strategy like this and grown a business from using this technology, these channels, these mediums, and scaled it? Right? Those are the right questions. So can you increase my organic visibility? Absolutely. Can you increase my conversions? Absolutely. Those are the right questions to be asking. And we have tons of case studies that show it doesn't matter what industry you're in. If these are implemented correctly, you can scale any industry regardless of being industry specific. So that's what I say. I say you're asking the wrong question. You should be asking me about how we've been able to grow XYZ, if you look at our portfolio, how we've been able to scale those brands, not what industry they're in.
And we get similar questions with integrations. We've done over 100 different types of API integrations before, and we get the question of, well, have you integrated, let's say, Shopify with the Microsoft ERP before, right? Like that specific integration. And we understand why these questions exist, but from our standpoint, it doesn't matter if it's development or marketing. What we look at is we look at the execution and the process. The data flow, the type of data that flows is not important. The business objectives, of course, is important. So we try to understand your business operations and what specifically your operations require in terms of knowledge or expertise. This conversation, of course, changes if you're in an industry that requires compliance. Like if you're selling firearms, I think that, yes, you need to know how the FFL structure works, how federal firearm licenses work. So if your industry is regulated, that's the terminology that I was looking for. If your industry is regulated, it makes sense for you to go, for example, with health insurance. Absolutely. With
nicotine products,
with
sexual enhancement products, with, like you said, firearms. I mean, there are tons of restricted, regulated
with financial companies, with banks, mortgages,
educational institutions. You also have, CBDs, which is now blowing up right now.
Yeah.
Yes, you want to be with an agency, a partner that understands the regulations and the restrictions. Right? Because at the end of the day, if you have an agency coming to you and let's say you sell firearms and they're like, oh, we're going to run Facebook ads for you and we're going to run Google PPC. You step back and be like, okay, this guy has no idea what he's talking about. Yeah. So in that case, yes.
Well, tell us why he doesn't know what he's talking about.
Well, because you cannot advertise firearms or CBD products or nicotine products or any of those products. Those fall under restricted categories.
On AdWords, on Facebook.
On any type of paid advertising, for example, on, like you said, Facebook, AdWords, Bing, you name it. Those are all restricted categories. So you want to have an agency that understands what your angles truly are, right? So once somebody approaches me, a prospect approaches me, we sell firearms online, I immediately focus on the strategies that we can actually implement to scale their business rather than focusing on just the generic A through Z of all the different types of campaigns and strategies you can implement. I narrow that down because we have that experience. But the reason why we have that experience is because we're industry agnostic and we work with every single industry out there. So, but just because we might not have touched on your little niche doesn't mean that we cannot accommodate and do the same exact thing that we've done for so many businesses before. That was the first time we've ever dealt with that demographic or niche and implement the same exact strategy and scale, your business. So, again, it's not about the industry. However, yes, it does help when you're dealing with a partner that knows about the industry.
Yep. So that's it for this week. We'll talk to you guys next week.